Hey everyone, so for years, Firebase has been the absolute champion for getting apps off the ground super fast with its NoSQL databases. But, as our apps get bigger, the data gets way more complicated. Today, we're going to talk about a huge step forward for the Firebase ecosystem, a really powerful tool they're calling Data Connect. So let's jump in and see how they're building a bridge between that classic NoSQL speed and the raw power of relational data.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever been deep in a Firebase project, loving the developer experience, but just thinking to yourself, man, I really wish I could just write a simple SQL join right now? If you've ever felt kind of boxed in by NoSQL when your data starts to look like a tangled web, well, trust me, you are not alone. It's a wall a lot of us have hit.
And this slide really shows you why. A lot of us hit what you could call the NoSQL wall. See, with a document database like Firestore, you usually denormalize everything. You might say, stick a whole array of a user's posts right inside their user document. And yeah, that's fast for simple reads, but it also means you're duplicating data all over the place, and trying to do complex things like, say, counting posts across all users, that gets really messy, fast. Relational databases, on the other hand, they keep things neat and tidy in separate linked tables. That gives you awesome stuff like joins and just rock-solid data integrity from day one.
So, what's Firebase's answer to this puzzle? Well, they've come up with a solution that's actually incredibly elegant. Instead of making you pick one or the other, the great developer experience you love or the database muscle you need, they just decided to build a bridge to connect both worlds.
They call this bridge Firebase Data Connect, but honestly, it is so much more than just a database connector. They're calling it a self-driving app server. Now, this is where it gets really cool. The whole idea is that you give it a blueprint, what they call a declarative schema, and Data Connect literally just generates and runs an entire optimized backend API for you. It takes all the tedious server and database management stuff completely off your plate.
So how does this whole self-driving thing actually work? It's a beautifully simple three-step process. First, you define your entire data model in a simple GraphQL file. That's it. Second, Data Connect grabs that file and automatically spins up a secure, production-ready GraphQL API. And third, that API runs on top of a fully managed Cloud SQL for Postgres database, and it translates all your requests into perfectly optimized queries. Simple definition, incredibly powerful result.
All right, so let's pop the hood and see how this actually works day to day. The entire philosophy here is schema first, meaning your whole backend begins its life as just simple, easy-to-read text file.
So yeah, forget about writing complex SQL scripts or clicking around in some UI to set up tables. With Data Connect, your entire database structure, all your tables, all their relationships, it all lives in one single .gql file. This file becomes the absolute source of truth, not just for the database itself, but for generating your type-safe client SDKs too.
Now, you might be wondering, how does a simple text file do all that? Well, the magic is in these special little instructions called directives. You just add @table to one of your types, and boom, that's a Postgres table now. You can use @call to fine-tune the column details, @default to automatically pop in values like the current user's ID, and, this one's super important, @off to define all your security rules.
Of course, in the real world, your schema is going to change, and Data Connect has you covered. The Firebase CLI can actually compare your local schema file to what's live in the database and show you exactly what's different. You can run it in strict mode, which basically forces the database to be a perfect mirror of your file. Or you can use compatible mode, which is great if your database is being used by other services and you only want to apply changes that won't break anything.
Okay, so you've defined your schema, you've deployed it. What's the payoff? Well, this is where things get fun. It unlocks some incredible new capabilities for your app. We're talking superpowers that were pretty much out of reach in the Firebase world before now.
The first, and maybe the most important benefit, is that security is baked in from the very first line of code you write. I mean, every single query or data change you define has to have an @opt directive. And if you forget to add one, the default rule is simple: no access. This secure by default approach is just a massive win for preventing those accidental data leaks.
And check this out. This is a perfect example of just how powerful and simple that security can be. This one little expression, this is a game changer. This single line inside your @auth rule guarantees that when a query runs, the user's ID from their login token is automatically plugged into the SQL where clause. What that means is the user can only ever get their own data. This replaces what could be pages of complex backend code with just one simple declarative line. It's awesome.
And of course, you get the full power of SQL.
Now you can do complex joins across a bunch of different tables in a single, super efficient GraphQL query. Data Connect even automatically creates fields for aggregations, so you can get a count, an average, or a sum without writing any extra code. And for those really heavy-duty analytics, you can use the @view directive to run pretty much any custom SQL select statement you can dream up and map it right to your API.
And this is where it gets really, really exciting. Data Connect actually has AI capabilities built right in. It uses the super popular PG vector extension for Postgres, which lets you do vector searches. So what does that mean? It means you can find data based on its meaning, not just by matching keywords. This is perfect for building things like recommendation engines or for grounding AI agents with your app's live data using a technique called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG.
Okay, all this power sounds amazing, right? But let's get down to brass tacks. Let's do a little reality check and talk about the practical side of things. What does this actually cost? And when should you choose it over something like Firestore?
So the pricing is split into two parts. The first part is for the Data Connect service itself. You can think of it as the managed API layer. It's billed per operation, just like other Firebase services. On the Blaze plan, you get a really nice free tier of 250,000 operations a month. After that, it's just $4 for every million operations.
The second part, and this is usually the bigger piece of the bill, is the underlying Cloud SQL for PostgreSQL database. Now, this is a provisioned resource, which means you pay for it by the month. A small instance starts at less than $10 a month, but that's obviously going to go up based on your production needs. But here's the big plus: cost predictability. Unlike a per-read/write model, you're not going to get a surprise heart attack on your bill if you have a sudden traffic spike.
So what if you're already deep into Firestore? Well, migrating isn't a one-click thing, and that's because you're fundamentally changing your data model from documents to relational tables. The process usually involves exporting your data, redesigning your schema, writing scripts to get all that data into the new database, and often you'll need to run both databases side by side for a while. It's definitely an investment, but for a lot of apps, especially read-heavy ones, it can lead to huge wins in performance and cost savings.
And finally, we've got to ask, how does this stack up against the main competitor, Superbase? They both use Postgres under the hood, but their whole philosophy is different. Superbase gives you way more direct SQL control and uses Postgres' own powerful row-level security. Data Connect, on the other hand, offers a higher level of abstraction with its managed GraphQL API, and it builds security right into the schema with something called Common Expression Language. So if you're deep in the Google ecosystem and you really value that seamless, managed experience, Data Connect is a really compelling choice. But if you prefer less vendor lock-in and want that direct database access, then Superbase's approach might be more your style.
And that really brings us to the big final question here. Firebase Data Connect isn't trying to replace NoSQL. It's all about giving you the right tool for the right job. It's a recognition that at their core, so many of our applications are built on relationships between data. So, as you're thinking about your next project, it's worth asking yourself, your data is relational. Shouldn't your database be too?